Welcome to the Pagan Temple. So what do a Norse shapeshifter, a Greek cattle thief, and an Egyptian storm god have in common? They're all tricksters. And across cultures throughout human history, the trickster has been one of the most compelling, confusing, and essential figures in mythologies. Welcome to the Pagan Temple. I'm Matt, and today we're going deep into the trickster archetype, exploring how this pattern appears across Norse, Greek, Egyptian, Celtic, and even Slavic traditions. This is a development level resource, which means I'm assuming you already have some foundational knowledge. You understand what archetypes are, you have some familiarity with at least one pagan tradition, and you are ready to explore more complex comparative mythology. If you're completely new to these concepts, check the description below for links to our foundational resources. There are some book resources and links to other articles that could help you understand this a little bit better. And by the end of this video, you will understand that first, the defining characteristics of the trickster archetype and why it matters psychologically and spiritually. Second, how trickster figures manifest across 5 different traditions with their unique attributes and cultural context. Third, the patterns that connect these figures and the most important differences that distinguish them. And fourth, how to engage with trickster energy in your own practice thoughtfully and safely. The full written guide with all the sources and additional resources and context is available on our website. Link will be in the description below. Let's dive in. Before we explore specific trickster figures, let's make sure we are on the same page about what we mean by archetype. An archetype is a universal pattern or motif that appears across human cultures throughout history. The psychologist Carl Jung popularized this term, describing archetypes as inherited patterns in what we call the collective unconscious. These are the shapes that human experience and the storytelling naturally fall into. You have probably encountered archetypes before: the hero, the mother, the sage, the shadow, the crone. These patterns repeat because they speak to something fundamental about human experience. Now, here is where I need to be very clear, because this is important. When we discuss the trickster archetype, we are identifying a pattern that recurs across cultures. Loki, Hermes, and Set share certain characteristics, but they are not the same being wearing different masks. Each deity exists within their own cultural context with unique attributes, relationships, and different worship practices. The archetype helps us understand these patterns. It does not reduce distinct deities into interchangeable figures. This is crucial for respectful practice. A devotee of Hermes would not substitute Loki in their rituals. These are different beings, even if they occupy similar archetypal space. With that foundation established, let us look at what defines the trickster pattern. The trickster is one of the most complex and paradoxical archetypes in world mythology. Unlike the hero or the mother, the trickster resists easy categorization. And honestly, that resistance to definition in itself is a core trait of this archetype. The moment you think you have pinned down the trickster, they slip away. But across cultures, trickster figures do tend to share several defining features. Let's walk through them. The first is boundary crossing. Tricksters move between worlds, between states, and categories that are normally kept separate. They cross these boundaries between the sacred and profane, living and dead, divine and mortal. This ability to move where others cannot makes them essential messengers, guides, and most importantly, in my opinion, agents of change. The second is their ability for shape-shifting. Most trickster figures can change their form. This shape-shifting represents their fundamental fluidity and refusal to be pinned down. They may become animals, change their gender, or take on disguises to achieve their goals. Third, they usually possess cunning over strength. Where warriors rely on physical power, tricksters succeed through wit, through deception, and clever manipulation. They often triumph over stronger opponents through guile rather than force. Fourth, they usually relate somewhat to appetite and excess. Tricksters frequently display uncontrolled appetites, whether for food, sex, or other pleasures. This excess often leads them into trouble, of course, but it also represents the life force in its rawest, most unfiltered form. The fifth would be culture bringer. Here's where it gets interesting. Many tricksters are credited with bringing essential gifts to humanity: fire, writing, medicine, divine tools, an eight-legged horse. These cultural foundations often come through trickster figures, frequently obtained through theft or deception from other gods or other deities. What looks like transgression from the god's perspective becomes a gift from humanity's perspective. And sixth, they usually possess some form of moral ambiguity. Tricksters are neither good nor evil. Their actions help or harm, and often do both at the same time. They expose the limitations of rigid moral categories. So why do so many cultures have a trickster figure? What function do they serve? Well, tricksters represent the necessary chaos within the order. Every culture creates rules, hierarchies, and structures to organize society. But rigidity becomes stagnation. The trickster introduces the unpredictable element that prevents systems from calcifying. Through their disruption, tricksters paradoxically support the long-term health of the very order that they seem to threaten. On a personal level, the trickster represents the parts of ourselves that resist conformity, that question authority, and recognize the absurdity inherent in existence. Now let us see how this archetype manifests in specific traditions, starting one of the most famous and controversial tricksters of all. Loki, probably the trickster figure that most people think of first, thanks in no small part to Marvel. But the mythological Loki is far more complex than any movie version. And if you want to see my video on whether Loki is or isn't a god, check the channel. I'll put a link in the description below. Our primary sources for Loki are the Prose Edda, written by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century, the Poetic Edda, and various sagas and stories. Loki is Jotun, often translated as giant, though that translation misses a lot of nuance and it may be a little iffy with modern linguistics. Became a blood brother to Odin and lives among the Aesir, the gods of Asgard. His role in Norse mythology shifts dramatically from helpful companion to cosmic antagonist. Let us look at how he embodies the trickster characteristics that I previously discussed. Boundary crossing. Loki moves freely between Jotunheim, the realm of the Jotnar, and Asgard, home of the Aesir. He is neither fully god nor fully giant. He exists in a liminal space between categories. This boundary position gives him access and insight that others lack. Shapeshifting. Loki is the most prolific shapeshifter in Norse mythology. He becomes a mare, yes. Gives birth to Sleipnir and Odin's eight-legged horse. He becomes a salmon, a fly, an old woman, and various other forms. His gender fluidity is notable. He is both father and mother to different offspring. He is the culture bringer and a troublemaker. This is where Loki gets really interesting. Many of the treasures of the Aesir come to them through Loki's schemes. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, that was Loki's doing. Gungnir, Odin's spear, that was Loki. Draupnir, the golden ring? Loki. But here's the pattern. These treasures were typically obtained because Loki caused a problem first and then had to solve it. He cuts off Sif's hair as a prank, then has to go to the dwarves to get her new golden hair made. And while he is there, he manipulates the situation to get other treasures too. Whether he's doing this to gain favor with the rest of the Aesir or not, it's a little uncertain, but he did it, and he brought gifts. The moral complexity of Loki is also very interesting. Loki's actions range from harmless mischief to profound tragedy. His role in the death of Balder marks a turning point where his transgressions become unforgivable to the Aesir. Balder was beloved, prophesied to be invulnerable. His mother Frigg had extracted promises from all things not to harm him. All things except mistletoe, which seemed too insignificant. Loki discovered this weakness and guided the blind god Hodor to throw a mistletoe dart at Baldur, thus killing him. After this, Loki is captured and bound beneath a serpent whose venom drips onto his face until Ragnarok. When Ragnarok comes, he leads the forces against the gods that he once called family. So is Loki evil? This is probably one of the most debated questions in contemporary Norse paganism. The sources show him as a figure who helps and who harms. Evil may be way too simple of a category for what he truly represents. Loki represents the necessary chaos within the Norse cosmos. His presence reminds us that even the divine order contains the seeds of its own transformation. Now let's look at a different kind of trickster, one who maintained positive relationships with his divine family. Hermes is the Greek god of boundaries, travelers, merchants, thieves, and messengers. Among the Olympians, he serves as the divine herald and psychopomp. That is, he is the guide of souls to the afterlife. His trickster nature is evident from the day he was born, literally. According to the Homeric hymn to Hermes, on the very day of his birth, baby Hermes snuck out of his cradle, found Apollo's cattle, and stole them. He was a terror from day one, obviously. He drove them backward to confuse the tracks and hid them in a cave. When Apollo came looking and accused the infant Hermes, the baby lied, convincingly, to Zeus himself. And here's where it gets interesting. Rather than punishing him, Zeus was amused. Of course he was. The theft ultimately led to Hermes gifting Apollo the lyre he had invented that same day, establishing a bond between the two gods. The transgression became the foundation of a good relationship. Hermes, as the god of boundaries, he can safely travel between Olympus, the mortal world, and the underworld. He guides souls to the afterlife and serves as messenger between realms. He is the god who moves where others cannot go. He crosses those boundaries. His Hermes, those stone pillars you might have seen in images of ancient Greece, marked physical boundaries and crossroads, liminal spaces, thresholds between territories. Hermes, as a culture bringer, he invented the lyre, fire sticks for kindling fire, and is credited with creating the alphabet in some traditions. He teaches mortals wrestling and other skills. Unlike some tricksters who steal from the gods for themselves, Hermes' cleverness directly benefits humanity. As a patron of outsiders, Hermes protects those who exist on society's margins. Travelers, merchants, thieves, those who move between social categories. He watches over everyone who exists in transitions. Now here's what makes Hermes so different from Loki. Unlike Loki, Hermes maintains a positive relationship with the other Olympians. His trickster nature is channeled into his divine functions rather than leading to cosmic conflict. This represents what we might call an integrated trickster. His disruptive energy serves the divine order rather than opposing it. He is chaos that has found a place within the structure. These two trajectories, Loki's path toward antagonism and Hermes' integration, reflect different cultural attitudes toward chaos and transgression. We will come back to this comparison a little bit later in the video. Set, or also known as Seth, presents an interesting case for the trickster archetype. He is the Egyptian god of chaos, storms, the desert, and foreigners. His relationship with other gods is very complex, and it changed significantly over the millennia of Egyptian religion. Our sources include the pyramid text, coffin text, the contendings of Horus and Set, and various temple inscriptions spanning over thousands of years. Set is most famous for killing his brother Osiris and dismembering his body. Now, murder might seem to disqualify someone from the trickster category, but look at his methods. He did not fight Osiris directly, he tricked him. He built a beautiful chest and announced that at a feast that whoever fit inside it perfectly could have it as a gift. When Osiris lay down in it, because of course it had been built to his exact measurements, Set slammed the lid shut and sealed it, Osiris's coffin. This reminds me of an episode of Friends where Joey locks himself in the cabinet and then the entire apartment gets robbed. So every time I think about this story, I also think about that episode of Friends. Don't hate me on that. It just keeps coming to my mind. But moving on. But yeah, Set slammed the lid shut and sealed him in it, basically becoming Osiris's coffin. It shows his cunningness over strength and deception rather than a direct confrontation. Classic trickster move. When you think about Set and necessary chaos, remember it's another trickster trait. This is where Set gets interesting. Despite his destructive actions, Set plays an essential role in the Egyptian cosmos. Every night, the sun god Ra travels through the underworld on his solar bark. Think of it like a ship, a boat. And every night, the serpent Apophis attacks, trying to devour the sun and to end creation. Apophis represents the chaos that threatens to unmake everything. And who stands at the prow of Ra's boat to defend against Apophis? Set. The god of chaos defends cosmic order against a greater chaos that threatens to destroy everything. His chaotic nature becomes a weapon for preservation. Shapeshifting and sexual ambiguity are also traits of Set. In the contendings of Horus and Set, both gods engage in shapeshifting and sexual trickery. The competition between them includes episodes of gender fluidity and sexual ambiguity that are the hallmarks of trickster narratives. Another hallmark of the trickster archetype is the changing of statuses. Set's reputation shifted dramatically over time. In early periods, he was a powerful protective deity. Some pharaohs took his name. He was respected. But later, especially during periods when Egypt was dominated by foreign powers, Set became increasingly demonized, for lack of a better term. He was associated with foreigners and everything threatening. His trickster nature remained constant. What changed was how the culture felt about that nature. This reminds us that the archetypes are not static. How culture relates to the trickster can shift based on historical circumstances. Let's jump into Celtic mythology with our third trickster, Gwydion Fab Dawn. It's a magician and trickster figure from Welsh mythology. He appears primarily in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi, a collection of medieval Welsh tales. Unlike some of the other tricksters we have discussed, Gwydion's primary power is not shape-shifting himself, but creating illusions. He is a master of illusion magic, so powerful that his deceptions temporarily reshape reality itself. In the fourth branch, Gwydion wants magical pigs that belong to Pryderi, Lord of Dyfed. These pigs came from the other world and are valuable beyond measure. So what does Gwydion do? He disguises himself and his companions as bards. He creates illusory horses and hounds, beautiful and valuable looking. He exchanges these illusions for Pryderi's pigs. The problem? Illusions don't last. When dawn breaks, the magical horses and hounds vanish. Pryderi realizes he has been tricked, and war follows. Gwydion's trickery causes real harm, including Pryderi's death in single combat with Gwydion himself. Yet Gwydion is not portrayed as evil. His actions set into motion events that ultimately benefit his family and kingdom. Like many tricksters, his morality cannot be easily categorized. Here's an interesting twist. Gwydion himself is subjected to transformation magic as punishment. When he helps his brother Gylfaethwy, don't kill me over the pronunciation, assault a virgin whom their uncle Math must keep his feet upon, Math punishes both brothers. He transforms them into pairs of animals, deer, then pigs, then wolves, forcing each to bear the other's young. The trickster who shapes reality through illusion is himself reshaped. The shapeshifter becomes the shifted. This reversal adds depth to his character and suggests that trickster power comes with trickster consequences. One more trickster to explore, and then we'll look at what connects all of them together. Veles is a major Slavic deity associated with the underworld, associated with water, cattle, magic, and, of course, trickery. He stands in eternal opposition to the thunder god Perun, representing the chthonic, that is, like the underworld, forces against the celestial. Our sources for Veles include the primary chronicle, various treaties between the Rus and the Byzantine, and reconstructed mythology from folklore and comparative study. The cosmic conflict in this? Well, in reconstructed Slavic mythology, Veles and Perun engage in eternal battle that drives the cycles of nature. Veles in serpent form steals something precious, cattle, or Perun's wife or son, and then hides them into the underworld or underwater. Perun pursues with lightning and thunder, striking at Veles wherever he hides. This conflict is understood and necessary. The lightning strikes that pursue Veles bring rain. The seasons turn through their struggle. Creation requires this ongoing tension between sky and earth, order and chaos. The shape-shifting aspect? Veles frequently appears as a serpent or a dragon, but he can take many forms, including a bear, an old man, various animals. His fluid form reflects his connection to water and, of course, his trickster nature. Him being the god of magic and oaths, well, something pretty fascinating about him. Despite his trickster aspects, Veles was invoked to witness oaths and treaties for these people. The 10th century treaties between the Rus and the Byzantine Empire invoked Veles alongside Perun. Warriors swore by both gods, the cattle god and the thunder god together, guaranteed agreements. This suggests that in Slavic thought, the trickster was not untrustworthy, but rather understood the nature of trust so deeply that he could actually enforce it. He knew every way an oath could be broken and therefore could hold people accountable and to their word. His representation in liminal spaces? Well, Veles rules over liminal spaces and times, the crossroads, midnight, transitions between seasons. Shepherds, musicians, and those who work with an unseen world were also under his protection. He is a god of thresholds, and the trickster is always the one who stands at the threshold. So we have traveled across 5 different traditions now. Let us step back and look at what connects these figures and what distinguishes them apart. So some of the patterns. Liminality. All tricksters exist in these threshold spaces. They move between worlds, between categories, and between states. This liminality gives them power, but also marks them as outsiders, never fully belonging anywhere. They represent necessary opposition. Each trickster stands in tension with the established order, yet their opposition is necessary for the cosmos to function. Without Loki, no treasures. Without Set, the sun gets eaten. Without Veles, no rain. Transformation? Well, shape-shifting is nearly universal. They are change itself, the force that prevents stagnation, providing gifts through transgressions. Cultural advances come through trickster theft or deception. What appears as theft from the gods' perspective becomes a gift for humanity. Some of the differences between these different trickster deities, well, we can't flatten these figures into one, obviously. The differences matter. Relationship to divine order. Hermes is fully integrated into Olympian society. Loki's relationship deteriorates from companion, eventually to enemy. Set defends order against a greater chaos. Even though he represents chaos, he defends against more chaos. These different trajectories often reflect different cultural attitudes toward those spaces. Also, how these deities were worshipped differs significantly. Hermes had widespread public cult. Loki appears to have received little to no formal worship in the Viking Age. That seems to be changing these days, but traditionally, people didn't worship him very much. And Veles was invoked in oaths. These differences matter for modern practitioners, and they're so different and beautiful and complex in all their own ways. In reference to the cultural context, each culture developed their trickster to address their specific needs. The trickster in an honor-based warrior culture functions differently in a mercantile Mediterranean culture, or an agricultural society dependent upon river cycles. The archetype helps us to recognize these patterns. Understanding specific cultural context helps us engage respectfully with these individual deities. So, you may ask, how can you apply this knowledge into your own practice? Well, let me provide some guidance. For a comparative study, read the primary sources. Before forming opinions about any trickster deity, read the original myths, the Homeric hymn to Hermes, the Eddas, the Mabinogi. Secondary sources and popular media often distort these figures. Study the cultural context of these figures. Learn about the society that produced each myth. Understanding Norse concepts of honor, Greek Xenia, Egyptian Ma'at, these illuminate why their tricksters behave in the ways that they do. Compare thoughtfully. Look for both similarities and differences between these trickster figures. Ask what the differences tell you about each culture. Resist collapsing distinct deities into one overall trickster god. It's not appropriate, and it's downright disrespectful. For deity work, well, if you feel called to work with a trickster deity, approach that with respect and appropriate caution. Research extensively before initiating any type of contact. Study the deity within their own tradition and their context. Learn about their associations, the historical worship practices, and the relationships with the other deities. Again, cultural context is important. Set some clear boundaries. Trickster energy can be destabilizing. Be clear about what you are and are not inviting in. Protective practices and grounding are especially important with working with trickster energies. Expect the unexpected. They may teach through disruption, humor, or uncomfortable revelations. Maintain flexibility, and of course, a sense of humor. And please respect their complexity. Do not approach expecting only fun and mischief. Their myths include very serious consequences for that mischief. They demand honesty, often exposing your own self-deceptions. For personal development, even without formal deity work, trickster wisdom can enrich your practice. Embrace liminality, those liminal spaces. Life transitions are liminal spaces where trickster wisdom applies. Instead of rushing through a threshold, learn to dwell there and see what possibilities may emerge. Question rigidity in your life. When you find yourself clinging to rules or identities, ask what the trickster might reveal. Sometimes our certainties need a bit of disruption. Find wisdom in humor. Find humor in wisdom. The ability to laugh at ourselves is a spiritual skill. Take your practice seriously without taking yourself too seriously. Accept the shadow work. Tricksters often embody what we would rather not see about ourselves. Working with these themes can help integrate aspects that we have denied. Let us recap what we have discovered and covered here today. The trickster is a universal archetype categorized by boundary crossing, shape-shifting, cunning, appetite, and moral ambiguity. They bring gifts through transgression and represent necessary chaos within the cosmic order. We have explored 5 manifestations. Loki, whose story moves from helper to antagonist. Hermes, the integrated trickster who serves divine order. Set, who defends creation with chaos. Gwydion, the master of illusion who is himself transformed. And Veles, the oath keeper and lord of thresholds. Each is distinct. This archetype reveals patterns. It does not make these deities interchangeable. Be respectful. For more on this topic, the full written guide with links to the sources and additional resources is on the website, link in the description. If you want to go deeper into any of these specific traditions we've discovered, check the foundational lessons on Norse paganism, Hellenism, and Celtic traditions on the website. More is being added regularly. And if you want to discuss this topic with other practitioners, join the Grove, our Discord community. There is a channel for exactly these types of comparative discussions, different path channels. We can get into these discussions however you like. The link will also be down in the description. Thank you for learning with the Pagan Temple. If this video helped you, please subscribe, share it to someone who may benefit from this information. And until next time, keep being the best part of what we're doing at the Pagan Temple.